Hi there. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. For anyone that's going to come listen to the replay, I am Tammy Cho. I am a face and body analysis expert and a chief energy officer. And today I have a very special guest that really taps into the power of the energy of horses. And I've heard this magic happen. Before I've heard people speak about this, but I never actually met someone personally. And so I'm really excited to have Nafissa here as we're going to talk about having like really reimagining leadership and cultivating this like depth of impact and authenticity in oneself. And so, welcome, Nafisa, for
Thank you,
being here.
Tammy. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to dive into this.
Yeah, me too. And please introduce yourself to the audience so they know who you are.
So, hi, everybody. I'm Nafissa Shireen, and I would consider myself, I guess you could say, a non-business business coach. I work with entrepreneurs, leaders, executives to really help them work on all the non-business things that show up as business issues. So, mindset, belief, energy, leadership, um, just everything about their personal. What goes on inside their head that will help them create the external results. And one of the ways I do work with them that makes it unique is we do workshops, retreats, and immersions with our horses here at my ranch because I'm also an equine facilitated leadership and learning facilitator.
Yeah, beautiful. And I love that because a lot of times it takes a community to raise a business.
Yes.
But many people don't talk about all the behind the scene works
Yeah.
that happens. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, this is what we're going to jump into today, right? And so, like, how did you, Nafisa, even start, this whole journey? Like, what's your story?
So I've had a very long, successful corporate career. I worked in all kinds of things from small retail. I worked with entrepreneurs in the beginning part of my career. And then I started to move on to bigger companies. I'm working in construction and then entertainment and then eventually into mining, where I spent the last, I'm trying to think, probably 9 years of my career was in mining. And so I managed to make it to the top in a man's world. And I really enjoyed that career until I didn't. And when I left that particular role, I didn't know what I was going to do. But what I really realized, the part that I enjoyed the most in my career wasn't, meeting the objectives or having the stock price go up, although that was kind of nice, especially if you're compensated that way. But those weren't my really drivers. My drivers were developing my team and working with people and being able to work with people and help them step into their next step so they could improve themselves and they could make more money and they could take on more responsibility. And
Mhm.
so at the time, I was working with an executive coach, and she kind of said, well, I'm not really supposed to give you ideas as a coach, but have you thought of coaching? And so I started to look into that. And so then started my career as a coach. And I was still, um, I guess you could say, still a non-business business coach. I mean, to me, business is simple because I've worked in business, 35-year career. So that
Mhm.
part was simple, but the people part was always fascinating to me. Like, what makes people tick? What makes them, here are the objectives you have, go do them. And people
Mhm.
don't do them. So why not? So I started to get really into the personal development side of things and the belief side of things and the mindset side of things. And then through all of this, I also had my own horse. I got him in 2007 or 2008.
Mhm.
And I found that I didn't even know that equine facilitated leadership was a thing. All I just knew is I couldn't be anything but myself when I showed up with my horse. Like, he put me through the ringer, and it was one of my best personal growth journeys, along with being an entrepreneur. And then I realized that you could actually work with horses. And so in 2018, we bought this ranch, and I went from one horse to four horses, and we brought them in, and I've never looked back.
Wow, that's, really amazing. Like, just your journey. Because it's like, yeah, it's true. Like starting in something like corporate where you weren't really allowed to maybe be yourself and to
Nope.
really follow your own joy.
Yeah.
And this is where you're at, right? Really
Yeah.
like, loving these horses and bringing them into, yeah, this whole journey with you in business. And so
Yes.
amazing. Thank you for sharing. And I'm just curious, like, I've heard about horse work before, but I'm curious what type of like audience would something like this help? And maybe with who you work with?
Well, so there's a lot of different modalities, or I guess you could say just like silos in terms of how the horses work with people. There's the therapy model, there's the coaching model, there's the healing model. There's a lot of different ways that people work with horses. And I would say I'm more along the lines of the leadership and learning and healing. I'm not a therapist. But the reason we bring the horses into the work is because for us to really develop ourselves and to develop our leadership, we need to be in full expression, full authenticity. We have to be confident in ourselves and our energetic signature. Our nonverbal communication means a lot. Our clarity at a subconscious level, these are all things that are really foundational to creating external results. And working with horses, I mean, there's a lot of modalities that you can get to all of that, right? Because I mean, we've talked about this, right? Where it's sort of similar things that we're helping people with, but there's just different ways that people can achieve those. And horses is one of the ways you can get there, because when you work with a horse, they are they're big animals, and so when we work with them, we can't hide who we are. Who we are shows up in those moments. And people tend to really be willing to listen to feedback from a horse a lot more than they are willing to maybe listen to it from another person or themselves, where they feel a lot more comfortable, or they have a compassion towards the horse where they want to make the horse feel comfortable. And so they can really collapse time in gaining that self-awareness that helps lead to really incredible leadership outcomes, clarity outcomes. And there's two different ways. There's actively working with horses, where we really are tapping into that leadership, tapping into that energetic signature, tapping into how we are perceived. They close the gap between social perception and self-image, so we can sort of see what's going on there. And then there's the reflective sessions, where they really help us to get into our parasympathetic nervous system. So we are in our most relaxed state. And in that most relaxed state, we can be creative, we can have ideas, we can get clarity. So there's two ways that we work with them. And so I have found when I've worked with clients, the coaching sessions, we work on stuff every week, but to do that really deep work, we get them here to the ranch and they have their sessions with the horses, and then whatever transpires, transpires.
Yeah, beautiful. It's sounds like entirely unique for one, and I feel like it would be really helpful to like paint a picture of like maybe like a challenge someone might have in leadership within self, and how horses like support that process. Like, would you mind maybe sharing a bit of a maybe a case study or a story around that?
Sure. So this one's probably more of a story than a case study. Um, but taking, for example, boundaries, right? And boundaries are probably one of the hardest things for anybody, because let's face it, we don't like to do it because it's uncomfortable. Why is it uncomfortable? Because somebody else might have a problem with the boundary. And yet at the same time, boundaries, whether they're with ourselves, with other people, energetically, we need them to be able to do the things we need to do, to lead, to make a difference, all of that. And a lot of times, the reason the boundary is a problem is because we've got a problem within ourselves. We're uncomfortable. We don't want to upset somebody else. And so when we do set that boundary, it's coming from a triggered place. And that's where some of the problems are going to lie, because when you set a boundary with somebody, when you're triggered, it's too late. You need to kind of know what that boundary is. And so when you're working with a horse, boundaries are, they're crucial. Like you have to have your boundaries. You can't not have a boundary with a horse. It's a physical safety issue. And also with horses, when you have that boundary with them, they feel a lot safer because they know what's expected. And so we'll do exercises to help, our different exercises with clients to help them really enforce those boundaries. So some of them might be just, don't let that, move that horse without touching him, just with your energy. And people are like, I can't do that, right? And it's like, yes, you can. You absolutely can. And when that happens, they realize that that's not just the horse that's moving. They have fully stepped into their power, and they have put up this energy, because you go into a room and the person with the biggest energy, they can just have a boundary and nobody's upset by it. Like you can just kind of tell like what that is. So they're learning that they have that within them. And a really fun exercise I love to do with people, and it gets a lot of laughs, but it really teaches you a lot about a person. And I had a retreat here one day, and I used the same horse for each woman that went into the arena,
Okay.
but each of them had a different reaction. The horse had a different reaction to them. And the exercise was, I put a food tub in the middle and said, don't let the horse get the food, but you can't touch him.
Hmm.
And it was hilarious to see how these how this horse reacted to each woman. And I kind of knew them, right? And I sort of knew where they might be a little bit stressed in their boundaries, or where some might be overly rigid and assertive, which is also the opposite. That doesn't help. And it was hilarious. So one of the ladies went in, and the horse was just like meh, and pushed her out of the way with his head and went to the treats and ate them, right? And so it was really funny. And so we were able to say, okay, so what happened there? And she just said, well, just I don't know, I felt bad stopping him.
Mm.
And in coaching her, you could kind of see that, well, the horse picked up on this. And so we were able to see where else this would show up. So it took her a while to have that energetic strength to just block him off, right? Another client went in, and the horse was kind of respecting her. And the second she turned her head, he went behind her back and took the cookies. And so when we started exploring it, she discovered that, you know what, this happens a lot, where she'll say no, or she'll set a boundary, and then someone comes in and asks a different way. And she
Mm.
discovered that pattern in her life. And then there was another woman that did yoga, what do you call it, warrior poses, before she came into the arena. And then she just stood there. The horse looked at her and walked away, didn't even try to get the food. So the cool thing too wasn't just what was happening with each of these women with the horse. It was when they were holding space for each other to witness what was going on, and they could clearly see where the energy was leaking, where they were strong, and
Mm.
to offer feedback in that aspect. So that's just like one fun example, but you
Yeah.
could really start to learn a lot about yourself. And I had one client here who we had asked her to move the horse without touching him, and she's like, I can't do that. And one of the things she was suffering with, so we're going to tie it back to real world activities, is scope creep with her clients. If they wanted more, she would just keep giving more, even though it wasn't part of the agreement. And because she felt she couldn't say no. And
Mhm.
so we worked quite a bit. I'm trying to think how long we worked on this with the horse, but eventually she was able to just put her hand up, and really, and it came from within. And the horse
Mhm.
just kind of backed up and gave her space and respected her. And we go out of the arena and we coach and we work on that. And she discovered that, she could feel the difference in her body with when he would come
Mm.
in and when he wouldn't. And
Mhm.
so when she left, one of her clients, who was infamous for scope creep, called her up, and she said, I went back to that same feeling that I had with the horse. Anyway, she ended up with a $4,000 new contract. Because the
Beautiful.
client the client wasn't trying to get anything for free. The client needed more services, and she was happy to pay for it. And my client was just too afraid to ask for it, because that
Mm.
feeling of, oh, it feels bad. So when she was able to learn how to project that energy and project that confidence, it was super easy. So it's really a lot about learning our own internal reactions to things. And horses can really
Mhm.
identify in us where we're having a psychological issue or trouble that we're not showing on the outside.
Like when I hear you speak about this, like I really like, first of all, being a leader, it's just having boundaries is just really a given thing,
Yeah.
like it's about being able to lead ourselves. And what these horses, what I hear you say, what they do is they help us see energetically how we are actually in our power, because oftentimes we come into business life and we see that we think one thing, but
Yeah.
then what actually is happening at an energetic unconscious level is another thing. And what I've heard about horses is that they're highly intuitive and in tune with
Yes.
energy, right? And so I'm hearing this is a really like, well, first of all, a beautiful place to be in nature and a ranch
Mhm.
to just calm our energy, but to
Mhm.
really amplify that with the
Yeah.
energy of a horse right in front of you. And so thank you so much for painting that picture, because that really speaks a lot, right? To,
Yeah. And what
yeah.
you're saying about nature, when you think about how much we have lost touch with our animal self, for a better word, because we're so bombarded by electronics and information, that we spend so much of our time in our intellect,
Hmm.
but it is our body that reacts to the environment way faster than our intellectual mind. And in that nanosecond of our mind catching up, our mind starts to tell a story or make something up about it. And we have learned, and we have been taught, and just from having, when we think of the pressure of having to show up or what other people expect of us, to push down what our body's telling us. And so when we're able to get into nature of any kind, and then having a great mirror like a horse, and we can suspend the intellectual process and just tune into the greater wisdom, what our body, our intuition, our energy is telling us, we can get a lot of clear answers. And that's where some of the reflective systems processes with the horses work. When we go into a heart lock with them, the Heart Math Institute has done actual testing on this where they affect our heart rate variability. And we can get into that rest and digest state, and we can get our clarity because we're learning to tune into our body and what our body is telling us about the environment or what's going on around us. And so that's also a very powerful part of the work, is just getting back in tune with those instincts versus our intellect.
Yeah, and as you know, a body whisperer, I could attest to that, right? Because a
Yeah.
lot of times our body is responding, and so you know, this is why you know we connect so well. And I love that the horse can really, yeah, they regulate us, so to speak. Because you know, oftentimes when we're out there leading the world in our own way, right? It's like we need to come back to ourselves, and this is really a way to do it in a way that is really amplified. And so this is really cool. And so I'm curious, like when what can someone you know expect when they come, and you know, first of all, where is your ranch located?
I'm in Maple Ridge, BC, so I'm very close to Vancouver, and so we're just a little suburb. We're an urban farm, so it's quite a small little space, but it's just enough. And so when they come here, it really depends on what they need to work on. And one of the things that I always say is, you know, we set an intention for our session or our retreat, but I don't have a hard and fast agenda. You know, I'm obviously going to have some exercises, you know, in my back, like a
Hmm.
rough idea of what we're going to do. It's not that it's completely unstructured or unplanned, but we have to be able to be intuitive and flexible and go with the flow. Because when you catch somebody's energy in action, when the masks come down and they are their true selves, you have to go with it. And the horses can really get them there quickly. And so then we sometimes will adapt what we do. So a lot of times the first thing we're going to have them do is kind of sit and interact with the horses to see what kind of feedback they're feeling from these horses, like what intuitive hits they're getting, what they're learning about themselves, what is it that they're drawn to. And one of the and I find this is really a very fascinating exercise. So at my ranch, we work all on consent-based approach with our horses. So we work with our horses. We don't use them. They're not tools. If they're not comfortable, they don't have to participate. So I'm always going to put horse safety first, their emotional safety, because that keeps the humans safe. So when we go to meet the horses, um, we have a rule here that is, you know, no touching horses that you haven't been introduced to and that haven't given you consent. So those first few moments, there is no touching. And it's really wild to see how some people really struggle with that. And
Mm.
so we're able to start opening up some dialogue as to what was coming up for them right there. And there's usually a lot of breakthroughs. And then from there, we work with really what the intention is of the retreat or the workshop. So for instance, if I'm doing a negotiation workshop, we might have 8 women here to do let's say a 2-hour workshop. So so we're going to do the introduction to the horses, and those aren't workshops where you have a lot of deep work, right? Like it's 2 hours in and out. So we're going to learn about how their energy is showing up in their negotiations, and so we'll split them into teams. And part of it is they have to get the horse to go through an obstacle course without touching it. And that's a big negotiation with the horse. And it's a negotiation with each other. And you start to really see the walls come down as people try to figure this out. But the best part is when, you know, you tell them, okay, there's 2 pylons over there, make the horse walk through it. Um, and they're like, I can't do that. And then they do it and they know it's coming 100% from their energy and how they're showing up. That changes them forever, because you take that out of the arena and you take that confidence to other people. Because you know this, you work in energy, the biggest energy in the room wins, right? So they learn how to project that in a very confident way, because you have to. If you're not confident and big with your energy, the horse is just going to be like, I don't have to listen to you and walk away. So there's just different types of things that we do. It all depends on the intention, but it's really truly about the people getting that self-awareness in a safe environment where
Mhm.
they don't feel judged, because the horses don't judge you, they just react to you.
Mm. It's so beautiful on many levels. Like, because I could see this for someone that is, yeah, very much, you've been in your head and
Yeah.
you've been operating out of your intuition and you just need that, you know, reinvention, so to speak, to
Yes,
really come
yes,
back to self. And
yeah.
this is like such a great way of being in a non-judgmental, safe space and
Mhm.
to really see what is exactly going on underneath the cover, so to speak. And so it's so
Totally.
beautiful. And Nafisa, how if someone is interested, drawn, and this resonates with them, how can they get a hold of you? How can they tap into the beautiful work that you do?
So they can find me on my socials, like Nafissa Shireen is what a lot of them are, and then my farm pages and my website for the farm and the ranch with the programs we do here is Believe and See Ranch.
I love
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. And I saw the pictures on her spaces. It's beautiful. And so you're really wanting to treat yourself to a retreat away from self, self in the world, social media, whatever that is, to really ground back into you, right? And to have someone who really knows how to lead you and guide you through this. In the presence of the beautiful horse energy, please reach out to Nafisa. And I'm curious, is there any last words you have for our audience today?
Last words. Well, I personally feel everybody deserves to be cracked open by a horse, whether it's mine or someone else's. you
Mm,
know,
mm.
even if I don't personally resonate with you, give yourself this gift of experience and find somebody you do resonate with, because this is just it's beautiful. It's a beautiful experience to have that, because you will learn so much about yourself.
Oh, thank you, Nafisa. And it's one of those things, right? Like we got to do it once in our life to really
Yeah.
experience it. And why not have the potency of horse spirit?
Yes.
So that's what I say. Beautiful. Thank you so much,
Thank
Nafisa,
you.
for being here. I'm happy to just drop your links in
Thank
the
you.
social media avenues this is broadcasting at. Please reach out, to myself or Nafisa if you have any questions you want to like learn a little bit more about anything. And yeah, thank you. Thank you for being here. And I'll look forward to hearing more about your work and yeah, to be an advocate for you.
Thank you so much, Tammy.